Coming up on today's episode, I'm showing you what I eat in a day again, and this time I've got 3 great meals you're absolutely gonna love. Let's get to the intro. Welcome back to another episode of Plant-Based Dads. I'm Joey. We are a whole foods, cooking, vegan channel. We do some product reviews, some DIY, sometimes there's some baking with Tim. If you like what you hear, please hit that like button, show us some love, and please think about subscribing and becoming part of the Plant-Based Dads family. All right, so if you are following us in the Facebook group, Plant-Based Dads, Starch Solution Enthusiasts, it's pictured right here, then you know we just finished the 21-day October 50-50 plate challenge for the Starch Solution. Lots of people having success on there. If you're thinking about starting the Starch Solution, or if you've been doing the Starch Solution and you want to mentor people, it's a great place to be, just to hang out, to share information, to get food ideas. People are posting pictures of their food. It's just a bunch of people doing the Starch Solution and all supporting each other. Our next challenge is going to be starting on November 2nd, the day before the U.S. election. Maybe that's not the best timing, but that's when it's starting, and it'll go for 21 days, and that'll be our last challenge of 2020. So if you're interested in making the switch over to a plant-based lifestyle and you like these challenges, it's the last time this year to do it before you start your New Year's resolutions on January 1st. All right, so if you've been following the show for a while, you know that I'm doing the Starch Solution. The Starch Solution is a way of eating where you eat high whole food carbs, low fats, and you lose weight. It's worked for me. I've lost 30 pounds on it, and I feel great. I'm at the lowest weight in years. Check out my Starch Solution playlist right here if you want to get some more information. If you're interested in some of the Plant-Based Dads merch, we've got a whole line of it right under the video. You can see some of the pictures there on Teespring. Give that a click, and it'll bring you to a site where you can purchase them. There's some really cool shirts that we have down there now. I just ordered a bunch to sample, and I'll be wearing them in the next few weeks. All right, so today's video is a lot of fun. I'm showing you some of my staple meals in what I eat in a day for maximum weight loss. The breakfast is really cool. It's some hash browns that I make in the George Forman grill, which I've had for like 20-something years, with some onions and peppers, and I show you how to do that. A great way to start the day off with breakfast. For lunch, we're doing my famous Louisiana-style red beans, and I absolutely love this recipe. It's so hearty and delicious. It's a full meal, and I mean, it's beans, right? So I'll show you how I do that. For dinner, we're going to be eating like a pauper with some soup and salad. All right, we're going to be having a soup and a spring roll. But the soup part is right out of the book, The Starch Solution. It's the sweet potato bisque. And you guys, it is so good. Wait till you see this. You're really going to like it. You'll absolutely want to make it. And take it from me, it is a family favorite. All right, so I've got 3 great meals. I can't wait to show them to you. Let's get to the food. For breakfast, I'm making my diner-style hash browns. You want to start with a frozen bag of hash browns that the only ingredient in it is potatoes. Then I laid out the potatoes on a clean cloth kitchen towel, and then I put another towel over it and started pressing to make sure I got any extra moisture out of there. Once I was done, I gathered it all up and put it into a nice clean mixing bowl. Now it's time to get my vegetables ready. I took about 5 small peppers that I washed and cleaned, and I started taking out the seeds and getting rid of the veiny parts on the inside. Then I grabbed an onion and peeled that, started chopping that up into smaller pieces. I don't dice with a knife, so I used a little chopper to chop the onion into diced pieces, and then I did the same thing with the peppers. I'm not really good with knife skills, sorry. Then I got a nice big mixing bowl and dumped in my frozen potatoes, which are now thawed out. Then I started adding in my spices. Here I'm putting in about 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. Then I added about a teaspoon of paprika. Then I added a little bit of salt. And I threw in some fresh ground pepper to taste. Next, I dumped in those onions that I diced up, and then the peppers that are now diced. After that, I gave it a good mix just to get everything incorporated here. Then I plugged in my George Forman grill and got that preheated. Once that was preheated, I started laying in my potato mixture. This cooks on the top and the bottom at the same time. It's an amazing device. I've had it for about 20 years. You can also use the griddler or anything like that. I closed the cover and I let it cook for 8 minutes. Once the 8 minutes was up, I opened it up and started scraping out the potatoes. I used a spatula and just pulled everything out of there, and you can see these potatoes look absolutely delicious. They're brown, they're cooked, they're steaming hot. So yummy. I put the potatoes on one side of the plate for my breakfast, and then I'm adding some coleslaw to go with this. I don't know why, I just like the coleslaw with the potatoes. It reminds me of like a picnic breakfast. After that, I popped in some cantaloupe because it's really fresh right now and it's delicious. So I've got a little fruit with my breakfast. And then I'm throwing a little oregano on top of it just to give it some color. An amazing hash brown breakfast with some coleslaw and some fruit. I'm ready to dig in. For lunch, I'm making one of my favorite meals, red beans and rice. Starting with a stock pot, and I'm adding in a few tablespoons of water. I'm going to sweat the vegetables, and I'm not going to use oil. Turn on your heat, set it to low medium, and wait for the water to start steaming. First thing I'm adding in is 1 diced onion. After that, I'm putting in 1 diced pepper. Then I'm tossing in about 4 to 6 celery ribs diced up. And here I've got 6 to 8 cloves of garlic. And now I'm throwing in a little bit of salt so I can get the vegetables to sweat. Then I gave it a good mix and let it sweat for 5 minutes. Keep an eye on it, stir it once or twice. If it looks like the water's drying up, add a little bit more water. While that's happening, I opened up 3 15-ounce cans of red beans and drained and rinsed them well. I also opened up 1 15-ounce can of fire-roasted tomatoes. We're using the whole can. I dumped 1/3 of the beans into my small food processor, and then I added half of the fire-roasted can of tomatoes. I ran this for about 10 seconds in the food processor, gave it a few more pulses, and you can see here when I take the cover off that it's not a puree, it's combined, but it's still chunky. That's how you want it. After 5 minutes of steaming the veggies, they should be nice and soft and ready to go. We're gonna dump in our bean tomato mixture that we just made, and then we're gonna add in the rest of the 3 cans of beans that we had opened, and the rest of that can of fire-roasted tomatoes. Now I'm gonna mix it all up to kind of get it incorporated. You can already see it's looking good right here. Now for the seasonings. I'm starting with 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I'm putting in some pepper to taste, and I'm adding 1 teaspoon of hot sauce. One more time, I'm gonna mix this all up to make sure it's nice and incorporated, and then I'm gonna turn up the heat and bring it to a boil. Once it starts boiling, I'm gonna put on the cover, make sure it fits nice and tight, and I'm gonna let this simmer on very low for at least 45 minutes. Once the 45 minutes is up, you can take off the cover and you can see how good this is looking. I'm gonna stir it up a little bit and I'm gonna turn off the heat. You can see here, this is a nice, thick, chunky bean mixture. Imagine this on rice. It's gonna be absolutely beautiful. Now it's time to plate up. So this is gonna take up half my plate because this is my starch for my 50-50 plate. Then I'm adding cauliflower rice because I want this with rice, but I don't wanna have another starch. The cauliflower is a non-starchy vegetable. And nothing goes better with rice than cilantro. So topping it with a little bit of cilantro, and then I'm gonna throw it on the beans too because why not? And you can see here I've got a beautiful lunch of Louisiana red beans and white cauliflower rice. Yeah, baby! For dinner, I'm having my sweet potato bisque. It's an absolutely delicious soup, and it's on page 273 of the starch solution. I started out with 4 cups of peeled sweet potatoes. I'm doing a rough chop because everything at the end is gonna be immersion blended. Then I peeled and roughly chopped 3 carrots. Then I peeled and roughly diced up 1 whole onion. After that, it was 2 jalapeno peppers. I cleaned them, de-seeded them, and deveined them. Next, it's time for the cooking. I started with a stock pot set to low-medium heat and put in 1/2 cup of veggie broth. Once that started simmering, it was time to add my veggies. I tossed in the onions that we chopped up, gave them a good stir, and then tossed in the jalapeno peppers that we chopped up. Then I stirred in those too. I let those veggies sweat for 5 minutes till the onions became translucent and the peppers got soft. I tossed in those sweet potatoes. I also tossed in the carrots, and now I'm adding 4 cups of low-sodium veggie broth. Make sure it doesn't have oil in it. I started stirring that up to get it all combined, and then I let it come to a boil. Once it started boiling, I stirred it all together. Then I put on the cover, reduced the heat to low, and let all of this cook for 45 minutes. When the 45 minutes was up, I removed the cover and tested to see if the sweet potatoes were done. They should be fork tender, and these are. The cooking part of this soup is done. I let the soup cool for about 30 minutes, then I started the blending process. I use an immersion stick blender to kind of get it all going here. You can toss it in a standing blender, you'll just have to do it in batches. It didn't take very long to all get pureed. You want to make sure this is pureed, it's a bisque, it should be creamy. And you can see here, it looks really good. Now I'm adding 1 cup of plant milk, this happens to be pea milk, and then 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And here I'm adding 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I gave that a good mix to get everything incorporated. And I'm adding 1 teaspoon of dried basil. Again, I'm mixing this all up to make sure it all gets blended. Now it's time to plate it up. I cut some fresh basil into ribbons and threw it on top. And because I want to have a salad with my soup, I'm having a spring roll, because you know how much I love spring rolls. And nothing goes better with sweet potatoes and spring rolls than peanut sauce. So this is my PB2 peanut butter dip for the spring rolls. And I'm adding some cilantro on top of the spring roll because it goes so good with it. And you can see here, guys, I've got a beautiful dinner of soup and salad, spring roll. I am so ready to dig in. 3 great meals, but I gotta tell you, out of all of those, my new favorite is the soup. Now, I would have said my favorite is the red beans. That is Tim's favorite meal ever. He loves coming home, having that with the cauliflower rice gives you your starches on one side and your non-starches on the other, which is really a pro tip in case you're interested. That's his favorite meal, but that soup right now in the fall is just so comforting. One of the tips with that, I mentioned this earlier when I was showing you how to cook it, is that basil, you don't want to put that in while you're cooking it because basil has a tendency to get bitter. So I just keep the basil in the fridge and I just kind of, chop it up into ribbons. I roll it up and slice it up into ribbons and sprinkle it right as I'm about to serve it. If you're going to serve the whole thing at once, which is a lot of soup, then go ahead and do that and add it in. I like to add it in for a topping and so it doesn't get bitter. I just do it at the end. For me, that's really kind of worked out to be the best way to serve that. All right, guys, that's our show for today. Please hit that like button. Show us some love. What's not to like? If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. Become part of the Plant-Based Dads family, and you'll get notified every time we have a new video, usually on Monday. If there's a DIY video, those are on Wednesdays. And if there's anything else like baking with Tim or any challenge stuff, that'll be on Saturday. And please, leave a comment below. What are your thoughts on what I'm eating today? Have you made this soup out of the starch solution? If not, you need to give it a try. It's absolutely delicious. Don't forget about the challenge coming up on November 2nd, our last challenge of the year. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.